This is the Ready Set Podcast, and here's your host, me, Joe Persinger. Hey, how was your week, you fucks? Mind cutting the music, Klaus? Thank you, sir. Well, we are back, everyone. That was one hell of a week I had in Piney Point, Maryland, and more on that later in the podcast. It's good to be back, I will say that. This Florida heat, though, I could do without the humidity, really. But anyway, we've got your Space Rocks this week. A Texas man's divorce is vacated. I had an ice cream poisoning scare a few days ago. More college scandal updates. And is Mitch Trubisky a bust? And in the staff report, I'm going to explain why the Democrats point to the sky and call it green. This is your one-stop shop current events and politics podcast. If society's a joke, then we're just here for the first set. Are you ready? Set podcast! So we've got 5 asteroids making their way through our neck of the Milky Way neighborhood. That's a little more than usual. Or is it? Still working on creating that soundbite, by the way. So the first one was on September 24th at 3:27 a.m. Its name was 1198FF14, 1,410 feet, traveling at 50,000 miles an hour. That's a lot of size and a lot of speed. That's at a distance of 2.6 million miles. The next one would be later that morning on September 24th at 6:52 a.m., 2019 SW1. A little smaller at 69 feet, traveling at 28,300 miles an hour. And that one's only about 714,830 miles out. So then we got 2 days later, on September 26th at 3:35 in the morning, 2019 QY3 at 217 feet, traveling at 18,700 miles an hour, about 3.3 million miles away from the sun. Looks like the majority of these really you don't have to worry about, except that second one I named. September 26th, later that afternoon at 3:36 p.m., 2017 KP27, 135 feet long, traveling at 10,500 miles an hour, only a million miles away from the center of the Earth. And then rounding the fifth one out of these asteroids, September 26th, 11:54 p.m., 2006 QV89, 170 feet long, traveling at 9,200 miles an hour at 4.3 million miles. So that one's way out there and just drifting. All right, well, that's going to be the asteroids. Not really much going on. I didn't really paper toss the asteroids, but that was pretty fucking boring. All right, so this happened to me the other night. I woke up to eat a midnight snack. My weapon of choice at this point in the evening would be a pint of Ben & Jerry's chocolate fudge brownie ice cream. I'm sure you've heard me in the past reference chocolate fudge brownie ice cream before. I know. These liberal fuck politics are skewed like the morals of the Clinton dynasty. And I'm talking about the ice cream. But regardless, these leftist fucks, they make a mean ice cream flavor combo. So if you can make something that tastes good, guess we can look the other way when it comes to your politics and me spending my money. But that's about it. I'm not donating to your shit because you can cook a mean casserole. If that's what someone took from that implication there. Anyway, I go to grab the pint of ice cream and remove the plastic sealer around the lip that lets me know none of these bored TikTok Tide Pod licking centennial fucks have fucked with my ice cream. But it wasn't there. This is a conundrum amongst conundrums. What do? Do I ignore the blatant warning signs and throw out the $5 tub of delicious sugary sins? Or do I risk it and say, fuck it, chocolate is chocolate, especially when there's brownie bites mixed into it? Excuse me. Nose has been bothering me the last few weeks. Allergies. But about a half an inch down as I'm eating, obviously we've discovered what choice Joe made. So about a half an inch down, it occurred to me, what if my blatant disregard for the warning signs end up costing me my life? And then, how would people just find me dead in the kitchen, dead in my room? How would they know it was the Ben & Jerry's? These thoughts are really plowing through my brain here. I mean, chocolate is good, but not if it's laced with cyanide. And then I thought, well, hey, what's the big deal? Yeah. And then I said, I better close the lid, just in case. And then I think, what's that taste I don't recognize? Why is that taste so chemically? Is this a synthetic compound making its way through my bloodstream, attaching itself to my cells, and using my body as a host to promulgate its own agenda? This must be what it's like to be a Clinton supporter. Anyway, I put the ice cream away. I didn't throw it out. I put the lid on it and put it back in the freezer. Yeah, that's how frugal I am. Within minutes, my heart started to flutter. My body heat began to rise. I could feel myself sweating. The taste in my mouth began to resonate through my tongue and actually started to convince me I was in the beginning stages of being poisoned. The blood in my body shot to my brain. I could feel it flowing through like the raging waters of the Colorado and Mississippi River combined. You feel that head rush, all the blood just rushing to your head. But then I thought, you over-anxious fuck, calm down, take a deep breath, do a Dow Jones exercise, and go to bed. And that's exactly what happened. I went to bed, woke up a few hours later, and polished off the rest of that pint like a Brit on a Tuesday morning. Cherry ho, motherfuckers! And that's my poisoning scare. Oh, do I need this? Yeah, I might. All right. So a Texas man has some explaining to do after divorcing his wife. Most of this explaining has to be done to the local and state governments, but the real person who probably deserves an explanation would be the man's wife. Paul Nixon, 51, divorced his wife using forged documents behind her back on May 14th, filing for divorce, and completed the entire proceeding without her knowledge or consent, and completed all hearings and filed a divorce decree. Nixon's wife says she, quote, was very surprised, unquote. Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't be? Methinks this lady mustn't not known whom she hath hitched her wagon to with. Constable Mark Herman was quoted by the New York Post saying, in this particular case, a gentleman decided to go through a divorce, but the only problem is he left his wife out of the process. That's the quote of a single man. Anyway, this idiot divorces his wife, but not their finances. So he starts buying jewelry. So she confronts him about it and goes on to explain that they've actually divorced. As if that's going to make her stop, as if that's going to make her stop in her tracks and say, oh, my bad, carry on with your shady-ass behavior. Well, if you think this guy is a genius, you're wrong. He got caught, and the state has vacated the divorce since it was filed fraudulently. So he paid to have that divorce. He lost some money here. So there's strike one. So if you can divorce her, but not the bank account, I suggest you stay in the marriage, or secretly divorce her and run for the hills. The only problem is, not only will you have your ex-wife tracking you down, you'll also have the state and county looking for you as well. So probably just not fraudulently file for divorce. All right. So last week I was out of town. I had to go to Piney Point, Maryland for safety certification training. SCTW is what they call it. I think it's safety certification training and watch. Anyway, this is for a cruise ship I'm going to be working on, and I gotta say, it was one hell of an experience. There's a maritime school located in Piney Point, Maryland called the Paul Hall Center at the southern tip of the state in a little town called Piney Point, where anyone looking to get into commercial maritime endeavors are taught the nautical ways of the seas. Really, it's if you're on an American vessel, if you're on a vessel that's registered in America and you're working, you got to take at least this basic course similar to what I took. And like always, my computer is being a fucking asshole. So So from what I understand, there's about 4 phases of training. Each phase is roughly 6 to 7 weeks at a time. And once this training and schooling is complete, you're able to take a job on any American registered cargo or commercial vessel sailing in the high seas. And then if you work on a cruise ship, or the brand that I'm currently working on, you're also sent to this school to get basic safety certification, like I said earlier, called SCTW. It's a first aid and CPR course, water safety course, personal survival training, crowd control training, water safety training, and my favorite, basic firefighting. So crowd control was, I mean, actually, I think we did like personal survival training, and that was basically where they're just talking about, um, you know, how to survive in the water, basic points like that. The help position, where you basically curl your legs up into your chest and just kind of sit there to kind of keep body heat. They talk about hypothermia, et cetera, et cetera. But crowd control was by far the best one. Um, what we did is we had a classroom setting for about a few hours, and then we went to our dorm, which is about 3 floors. I guess they're still working on the second and third, renovating it. So we went up to the second floor, which is going to be deck 2, and simulated, an emergency situation where you have 2 leaders and 3 crew, depending on how the groups broke down, that were going to evacuate guests off the second floor and bring them down, to what we call a muster station. If you're in the Navy, you probably recognize what a muster station is. If you don't, it's basically a fancy word for a gathering, a place to meet, a meeting place. Naval terms. What can you do? So you had someone wearing a green vest with a walkie-talkie who was in charge of the muster station. Basically when we would get guests from the second deck to the first deck, they were basically in charge of just making sure everyone stayed calm down in that part of the first floor. The 3 crew members and the station leader were upstairs on the second deck or floor, and basically were trying to round everyone up and get them downstairs. The other side of the exercise was with the people who were playing the guests were all given different roles. So the first time around, I was basically one of the crew. I wanted to be the station leader, but someone beat me to the vest and walkie-talkie. It was fine. I watched the Jocko podcast. I know how to lead from behind. So we were basically tasked with going up there and getting everyone down, come up with a plan, etc. I came up with a great plan. I did all the counting. I'll take all the credit because I'm just a very organized person. So right before we went upstairs to kind of mitigate the quote-unquote disaster, the gentleman who was running the classroom and the exercise basically told us, he goes, "You guys are lucky you volunteered for the first time because the second and third time around he's gonna put those people through hell." So basically, we were rewarded with a nice, easy peasy, way of getting those people from the second floor down to the first floor. The second time around, this was fun. So we went upstairs. Now again, I'm simulating that I'm a passenger on a ship. So when he was handing out everyone's different roles, he handed me one that said, "You're going to ask a lot of questions," which, I mean, that's me naturally. So it wasn't much of a stretch there. Everyone else was kind of given, specific ones like, your arm is broken, this, that, the other. There was a gentleman there who was training to be a security officer on the ship, and a security officer isn't a security guard. It's basically the director of security on the ship, and he was a former Miami police officer. So our instructor, John, basically said, "Mickey, you are going to try to take control of the situation." And he goes, "I'll even give you bonus points if you can take the walkie-talkie away from the station leader." And then he turned around, he's like, "Oh, and all of you are going to follow exactly what Mickey says." So it was all hell broke loose. So they sent everyone up. I was actually in the bathroom, simulating that I was hiding, or because one of the things they taught us is adults do weird shit when things start hitting the fan, and that's coming from a firefighter, so he's seen it. So I was in the bathroom. Now here's what was interesting: the team they sent up, which was about, I think it was 3 or 4 crew and a station leader, no one bothered to check the bathrooms, and that was one of the first things they taught us: is you got to clear those rooms out, make sure someone's not hiding in the shower. Someone, in times of an emergency, they might go into the bathroom and just hide in there, or other stuff. I'm not just saying. So I sat in the bathroom for it felt like 5 minutes. It was probably 2. And no one bothered to knock, check in on it. So I opened the door, and I just start, basically screaming and yelling, "What the hell's going on?" So they tried to corral me down to the first floor, which didn't work because I kept asking a lot of questions. And I think at one point I ran past Mickey, and Mickey was just like, "Don't listen to them. Don't listen to them. Just listen to me. I know what's going on." He's like, "Just go into my room." And this was just a back and forth for a while. And we were basically told to do this until our instructor stepped in, and then told us to stop acting, just go downstairs. So how it was working, I guess, I didn't know this at the time, but let's say they were trying to corral us. One of the things they trained us to do is, don't put your hands on anyone, don't yell at anyone, think food service bullshit, but, and they're trying to save someone's life. And it's just a high stress exercise. So I guess people would do is when they realize no one's like listening to them or wanting to do what they want them to do on the ship, you're supposed to call security. Well, our instructor was simulating, hey, security's not going to be able to drop what they're doing and help you out. You might have to rely on yourself to get people down there. So that was kind of what the delay was. So I guess when he kind of saw where their stress level was at, how they dealt with it, he would step in and be security or the medical officer, et cetera, et cetera. That one was really fun. I think they did a good job kind of rounding us up. Mickey, I think the strategy was get Mickey to lead everyone downstairs, but if you're also wondering, Mickey was unable to get the walkie-talkie away from Brooke, who we called New Orleans. What was the second one? Oh, the second one was great. I have videos of these. I'm tempted to put that on, maybe I'll put that on the Facebook page. Maybe I'll tweet one out or something so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. This next one was great, though, because we just simulated like a hotel room party. And they had to break it up. And what was funny is, when the crew would come in, one of them was actually he's like a Port Authority police officer in Canada, in Newfoundland, I believe. So he has that, strong speaking tone because he was also a cop prior to that. So he came in the room, and I think he was trying to say elevator or something, and he said elevation instead. And that one mistake caused the whole that whole party to turn on him. And, of course, they have me yelling, oink, oink, bitch. This little throwback to when I was 19 and I used to torment cops all the time in Highwood. And, yeah, it was just interesting to see how that worked. Then another guy, Wade, who actually ended up being my roommate, he tried to kind of address the crowd and talk to them. And, again, he flubbed his talking point up. I think he just mentioned a word wrong, and we all turned on him. It was pretty cool. That was a great experience. I think that video was very shaky because I was dancing and filming, and it was pretty crazy. It was about 3 minutes long too. I honestly can't remember how they ended up breaking that one up, what they did or anything like that. I think we kind of moved parties room to room until John, our instructor, was like, "All right, you're good." But that was really fun. I really liked the crowd control exercise. We did water safety training on Wednesday. And that was basically simulating, we had to demonstrate that we can put on a life preserver life preserver on in less than a minute. We had to jump off about a 4 or 6 foot platform into a pool wearing a life vest. There's also this thing they call a Gumby suit, which I'll have to tweet this photo out as well. And it's basically, think life jacket, but it's a whole suit. So you look like Gumby. Excuse me, I had the hiccups. And, you wear this whole, so think a wetsuit that makes you float, but it's a little bit more bulkier. So we had to jump into the pool and demonstrate that we could do all that shit. And then my favorite was treading water for a minute. That I was kind of skeptical on because when I was a kid, I could not tread water for my life. But, when you run about 9 to 10 miles a day, it helps a little bit. One of the big assessments we had to do was, so you've seen those life rafts before. They have the canopy in it to kind of protect you from the sun if you're in the middle of nowhere. And how these work, some of these, you pull a cord and they inflate, but also a majority of these are in it looks like a plastic container. I don't think it's plastic though. And it sits in this circular drum. And what happens is these things are set to so let's say that boat starts sinking for whatever reason. God forbid I have to deal with this. I'm only a few miles off the coast of Hawaii, but it's good to have this shit no matter what. So if a boat sinks, when it hits a certain depth, I want to say it's like 100, 150 feet, something like that. They tested me on this and I can't remember it, but there's a mechanism in this unit that basically allows it to know, hey, I'm at a certain depth, I need to release this life raft. So when the life raft is released and inflated, it shoots right up to the surface. The problem is sometimes they end up upside down with the canopy facing into the water. So one of our assessments was we had to show that we could swim up to it. There's a strap on the bottom side of it, and you had to take your feet shoulder width apart and pull the raft up on top of you and then climb in and all that stuff. That was a pretty fun assessment to do. We only did it with an 8-man raft. They were saying some of these are like 25-man rafts, so they're pretty big. And yeah, obviously I passed that with flying colors because, I'm a fucking beast. Fire safety training was very interesting. It was probably one of the hardest academic courses of the week. That was a big test that I thought I failed miserably. It was actually funny. So we took the test, and Thursday morning, and I thought I failed it. I did. I mean, I remember we took the test, handed them in, came back from our break to work on first aid and CPR, and the first hour of that lecture, I couldn't even focus because I'm sitting there thinking, I failed this fucking test. Probably missed it by a question or two. Now I got to sit here past Sunday into Monday. I have to be one of these people that didn't pass the first time around. It's a lot of stress going on. Then they post the score, and I passed it like a 96%. So, or maybe it was 92. Either way, it was nothing to worry about. So yeah, once I got that out of the way, that was nice. But on Wednesday, so this is right before water safety training, we had to be up at 7 in the morning. Actually, I think we were at 6, got breakfast. And then we had to meet right where the mess hall is, and we got bused to this fire safety training school. And we were basically told that you're going to simulate a search and rescue situation. You're going to put out a simulated fire and then use fire extinguishers on 2 separate fires to show that we know how to use them. And on top of that, we had to pass an assessment that showed us getting into our fire safety gear. I think we had about a minute to put it all on. So that was fun. And we had the pants, the boots, the fire safety jacket, and then we also had the breathing apparatus on. So, that's the regulator, the air tank, the shoulder strap with the air tank on it. It was really cool. The search and rescue assessment was basically they had this like square room, I'd say 10 by 10 by 10 feet, something like that. It was about, roughly that. And what you had to do was on your hands and knees, so you'd have 2 people, one person with their left hand on the wall, and the other person hanging on to any part of their body so they could follow. You couldn't see with your hand in front of your face. And remember, you got a breathing apparatus on, so basically I don't know if you've scuba dived or worn fire safety training stuff. That was the first time I had ever had some kind of breathing apparatus like that on. And it was very daunting because I don't know if you ever heard one of these things before, but it's and what that is every time you're breathing in, it's breathing with you. It's very interesting. I felt like I was suffocating in that thing. So there's a purge valve on the regulator that allows you basically to blow in the air. So you're kind of getting fanned in the face. Don't really know if the fire department wants you to do that because you're basically just wasting air, and you only got about 15 minutes of air in there. But I knew I was going to be done with that exercise within, that allotted time. And then plus, if you run out of air, you just change out your air keg, if you will. So anyway, the search and rescue team was cool. We, one guy had his hand on the wall. I was the guy next to him, and we basically had to feel our way through this dark room with fake smoke in it, find a mannequin, drag it back to the door, hand it to the fire chief, and then we could stand up. They said if you stood up or walked out of that simulated room before the dummy, you would fail. So it was almost fail-proof. You just had to have enough balls to get through it. Then immediately after that, we had to walk over to where they were simulating a fire, and we had to take one of those big fire hoses and use the nozzle and put out the fire, and then you'd switch. The person who was the nozzle person became the support person, where you had, because that hose is strong. That's what she said. And they just wanted to make sure you could use the nozzle with the sweeping formations. The 2 different, there's like 4, maybe it's 3 different. Again, I should know this stuff, but I just kind of studied to pass. There's a low velocity, high velocity, and then another one that's for like more of a defensive position when you're just watering shit down so the fire doesn't spread. And we had to do all that stuff minus the defensive shit. And then that was basically that assessment. Then it was the fire extinguisher stuff. But the hard part was over at that point, and that was by far my favorite part of the firefighting training was the search and rescue and using the fire nozzle. Now, what's interesting is the reason they do this, a lot of you are probably like, what do you need a fire safety training course for? There's a fire department. Well, not on a boat there ain't. And even if, you're a few miles off the coast of Hawaii, they're not coming out to put out a fire on a boat. So how does that work? Oh, we have a volunteer firefighting team. Now, rumor has it that if you join the volunteer firefighting team on the ship, you don't call it a boat, you call it a ship, you get free Wi-Fi and access to a better workout facility. So if you know me, I'm in. Now, again, this is a rumor. No clue if this is even true or not. But when I get on the ship, I'm going to inquire about joining this volunteer firefighting team because of these perks, and I'm hoping that's the case. Of course, I say that now, and then a fire breaks out, and I'm probably going to be one of the first ones jumping off the boat into a life raft. But either way, it should be pretty cool. I'm really excited about this opportunity, and I really hope I get that. I don't know if I mentioned it, but there's free Wi-Fi involved in this deal, too. And it's not even that great Wi-Fi, so I don't even want to pay for it. Do I paper toss this? Yeah, let's paper toss it. What the fuck? All right, so a hyperbolic article in The Athletic by former lightweight Patriots GM Michael Lombardi added more fuel to his Mitch is a bitch bonfire last week. Here's an excerpt. Trubisky is not fluent in playing quarterback. He lacks overall instincts for the position, accuracy, and when the game speeds up, he slows way down. He is a great athlete with a strong arm playing the position, not a great quarterback with high-level instinctive skills. Pace fell in love with the athlete, the arm, the movement, and he forgot about the traits that are essential to play the position. Instincts matter more than anything. Being quick-minded is way more important than being quick-footed. If you watch Trubisky and Patriots quarterback Tom Brady work out, without knowing their history, you would pick Trubisky every time. But Brady knows how to play the position. Trubisky doesn't. Here is a classic chowderhead fuck comparing everything to Tom Brady. You're going to compare a guy who's been in the league for 3 years on his second offense in 3 years to a guy that's been in the same offense with the same coach for almost 20 years and throwing the ball professionally almost as long as Trubisky has been alive? Get the fuck out of here. You homer fuck. Sound the alarm, Klaus. We have what's going to be dubbed on this podcast the Homer Alert. Now, I'm going to agree with one point here. The lack of accuracy is slowly becoming an issue for me. Last Monday's game here, there were a few throws that were a little off the mark for an NFL caliber quarterback, especially in his third year. Especially one that was picked in front of Kansas City quarterback Patrick Mahomes. But, I'm still going to kind of stay optimistic here. If Mitch is going to graduate to the next level of being a pro quarterback in the NFL, he's got to make those accurate throws. And I'm not talking about these big situational throws on 3rd and short, 3rd and long, or even in high-pressure situations on 4th down. I'm talking about the first or second possession in the game when you're throwing the 5 to 13-yard in or backside drag route to the middle of the field. That's where the accuracy and touch throws need to be made, especially in a vertical route. He threw one right over the head of, it was Gabriel or one of those guys. These are throws you have to make as a quarterback. I mean, Aaron Rodgers makes it look like he's taking a dump. It's just so fucking natural. And you can make these high-pressure situational throws all day long, but if you can't do it when you're trying to build momentum or control a game, like I was just saying in the first or second possession, when you're trying to establish a rhythm, you're just going to be another backup quarterback by your next NFL contract. They said millions would come. They said millions would run. They said nothing will stop them. Well, none of that turned out to be true when the Area 51 event kicked off last weekend. Only 75 people showed up to the Area 51 gate. Nobody ran past the guards, and a small police presence and K-9 unit was really all it took to prevent anyone from storming the gates. There were a few people, like always, that couldn't control their behavior. 2 people were detained by the local sheriff deputies, and it wasn't clear what the offense was. Were they aliens? I don't know, man. Maybe they were just being like assholes. One attendee that was at the gate named Jeffrey, Why doesn't this guy just go by Jeff? Is Jeffrey more prominent? Who the fuck prefers to be called Jeffrey? I'm just going to go ahead and say it. We might have a soy boy here whose mommy is still doing his laundry and depositing his allowance into his bank account, which allowed him to go to Rachel, Nevada on a random weekend in September. Anyway, soy boy Jeffrey said police were having fun with the visitors until a teenager ducked under the gate for a moment and was grabbed, scolded, and let go. Way to, ruin the vibe, man. That was a mistake. I would have made it, if I was the cops, I would have made an example of that kid in front of all 75 of them, or 74 of them. Maybe even taking it a step further and take him into the second layer of the base, rough him up, and make him walk back to the first gate after shooting him in the knee. Okay, I've been playing too much video games, apparently. Jeffrey also said he saw a man detained for urinating on a fence and has not seen him since. Well, maybe he's being held in Area 51 brig with Zaliathon from a galaxy about 200 light years away after a ship crash landed in the desert about 50 years ago after taking a wrong turn over Albuquerque. Area 51, Jesus. And no word, I haven't read anything about that AlienStock shit that got moved into Vegas. The fact that no one reported on it probably says it all right there. Okay, so the sentences are starting to roll in for all the perpetrators of the 2019 college scandal. We're still waiting for that big fish, Lori Loughlin and Massimo Target guy shirt dude. I think their sentencing is going to be in a few weeks, about a month maybe. We covered what happened to Felicity Huffman a few weeks ago, but let's take a look into everyone else that has been officially sentenced. Stanford sailing coach John Vandemauer, who accepted $600,000 in bribes and put all that money back into the sailing program, was sentenced to 1 day in prison with time served, with 2 years supervised release and a $10,000 fine. Fed prosecutors wanted 13 months in prison. So, interesting to see how there's a discrepancy there. Parents who is an LA business executive, Devin Sloan, paid Rick Singer $250,000 to get his son into USC's water polo team. He bought water polo gear, was instructed how to take the photos, claimed his fortnight playing lazy son was a perimeter player who played for 2 non-existent teams. I think one was the LA team and another one was a national US team. Who the fuck knows? Cares? They don't exist. He was sentenced to 4 months in prison, 500 hours of community service, 2 years supervised release, and a $95,000 fine. The feds wanted 366 days in prison, 1 year supervised release, and a $75,000 fine. So it looks like he got almost 2/3 of that slashed for paying an extra $20,000 fine, more community service, and an extra year of supervised release also to shave off some more time. All right, I guess that's the justice system, folks. That's the world we live in. If you got money, you don't have to pay jail time. I know I've talked about that before. Stefan Semprevivo, I think that's how you say that guy's name, paid $400,000 to get his son into Georgetown as a tennis player. He was sentenced to 4 months in prison, 2 years supervised release, 500 hours of community service, and $100,000 in fines. The feds wanted 18 months in prison. Wow, they wanted a year and a half for this guy? Wow. 1 year supervised release and $95,000 in fines. Even though the feds wanted more, he still got a similar deal to the guy before him. So this guy whose son I can't talk. The Georgetown tennis player. So the son who got into Georgetown as a fake tennis player, this kid is suing to prevent the school from kicking him out due to fraudulent entry into the school. I think this is his quote. He said, "It will ruin my future. How will I get a job? What about my hard work for the last 3 years?" So these were questions posed by his lawyer. So his lawyers asked, it will ruin his future. How will he get a job? And what about all the hard work for the last 3 years? Well, I got the answers for you, kid. It won't. Your dad, and I'm sure your dad will bail you out again. So I guess this is still going to kind of break through the rest of the year. Obviously, when Lori Loughlin gets sentenced and anyone else, we will update you right away. All right. Well, let's get to the staff report.
In my hands, I hold the staff report.
So what is really starting to annoy me in politics is watching the Democrats and even Republicans too be that very same guy that they accuse Trump of being on a daily basis. Takes one to know one, I guess. You know what I'm talking about. That guy who argues until he's blue in the face about something so innocuous as the sky being blue, except he or she thinks it's green. You march outside, point to the clear blue sky with clouds floating through the air like that milkshake you dumped on your ex-girlfriend when you caught her flirting with a random bartender at this hole-in-the-wall trash drinking hole she dragged you to last week. Your friend looks at you and accuses you of using alternative facts and is hell-bent on convincing you that the sky is green, not this deep blue that your eyes are seeing. This is basically the Democrats and their bullshit talking points. This is their attitude towards the Russian collusion scandal, toward the Kavanaugh hearings, polling data, Clinton losing the election, because she thought the blue wall could never fall. And the list goes on. They know the sky is blue. They understand the sky is blue. But they have to argue that it's green, and they're going to convince you at any cost. Any cost. That is, until Trump looks up and comments how the sky has been looking slightly green lately. That's how deranged they are. The second Trump goes to the spot they're at, they're just going to flip-flop to the other side. And while we're on this subject, I like to point out how fucking ridiculous the media is. So while I was in Maryland, every day on my way to the mess hall, I passed these two TVs that were always on CNN. Yeah, fucking Maryland and these East Coast Democrats. So around the 21st of September, I started to notice CNN reporting on the beginnings of this so-called whistleblower accusations. Now, without internet access, because I was in the middle of nowhere, a reliable cell signal, really, because I was literally right up next to the ocean in the middle of nowhere in the forest, it was nearly impossible to follow up on any of this reporting via my own research. Day by day, walking past these TVs on CNN, I started to understand why the country is up in arms when it comes to Trump. You know, if you're one of these Americans who have no time to delve into the wonkiness of DC politics, and the only thing you think your mind is able to comprehend is reading and regurgitating headlines from the fake news media, I can see why you're worried. I was. The narrative these fake news media outlets push is akin to hijacking an airplane and threatening to do something fucked up with it. But instead of hijacking a physical property that could do physical and mental harm to fellow humans, news outlets like CNN, ABC, Fake News NBC are hijacking regular Americans' free will mindsets and steering them directly into to the proverbial Trump Tower. I cannot stress this enough. The corporate media and the anti-Trump hysterical digital media aren't reporting facts. They're reporting a narrative with the intent of not only hijacking your free will mindset, but they got their sights set on something even bigger than that. The 2020 election. All of this bait and switch fake news and facts narratives reporting isn't about informing. It's a guerrilla campaign meant to maim and lacerate the Republican Party and current administration going into this general election cycle. It's all about promulgating fake news and fake narratives to put everyday Americans into a fearful state so they will vote Democrats into power out of fear, not sheer will. It's one arm of the Democrat state TV political party meant to tear down the current president and the Republican Party or anyone that supports them. Then there's impeachment. Impeachment isn't about removing the president for high crimes and misdemeanors. There aren't even any high crimes or misdemeanors. This is about subverting an election, a domestic election interference, and using impeachment as a scarlet letter to give the Democrat nominee with a leg up in the general election cycle. It's desperate and hypocritical. And it's obvious what the media and Democrats are doing. It is. What I can't understand is, what is the Democrat Party and media going to do when Trump wins in 2020? Freak out for another 4 years? Yeah, probably. But what about 2024? And I've brought this up numerous times before. In 2024, or God help us, 2020, are red pill Republicans like me and lifelong Republicans going to turn around and say, well, now that that's over, I guess we can go back to taking the media seriously and believe that the Democrats do care about the country as a whole and not as a coalition of minority voters that they think will keep them in power for years to come at any cost to this country. And that's the staff report.
We're trying to get a feel for how people spend their day.
The staff reports.
All right, that's going to do it for us this week. Thanks for listening to Ready Set Podcast. Check us out on Spreaker. Give us a like and a follow. We're also on Apple Podcasts. Please leave us a rating and a review. It really helps the podcast get out there. We're also on Mixcloud. We're on YouTube. Don't forget to like the Ready Set Podcast Facebook page, leave a comment, or send us an email. This is your one-stop shop current events and politics podcast. If society's a joke, then we're just here for the first set. Thanks for listening, and please share the podcast if you'd like to support us, and we'll see you next week, you fucks.
Thanks for listening to the Ready Set Podcast. Check us out next week, and don't forget to follow us on Twitter and look for us on our YouTube channel, Ready Set Podcast.